Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tim and John show. It is Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. And I'll tell you the hardest part about doing the show is trying to narrow down all the crazy stuff we're going to talk about. I mean, the debt just passed $30 trillion. Of course, unfunded obligations are probably, closer to $200 trillion before the pandemic began. Terrible job numbers came out today. We've got the Federal Reserve backpedaling. Got a former Federal Reserve governor, the same guy that said that the Fed was using heroin and cocaine to inflate the markets. Now they're using Adderall. Well, that was in like 7 years ago. But now he's saying that the Fed has beer goggles for their current recommendations. And this is a former Fed governor. And that's just, oh yeah, I mean, since the last Tim and John show, the Federal Reserve on their own website launched a 40-page policy paper on basically Fed coin, the CBDC. Yeah, any other day, that'd be like a red alert fucking headline, but not in this world. We've got, I mean, maybe that is the headline. You guys let us know in the comments, like, what is the craziest thing on board here? And yeah, I think that, but we did, I did talk about that with Ernest Hancock on his show and had about an hour-long show on that where I read the whole 40-page thing and gave you guys the highlights. I know that that's up in the podcast feed. John also had like a marathon. He had like an actual like marathon episode with him that was like 3.5 hours long, getting into a lot of the trucker stuff going on, a lot of like the really behind the scenes things, the repo crisis. And I'm not all the way through it. I've only listened to like an hour of it. Sorry, John, I have a lot of stuff going on. But you guys can go to timandjohnshow.com so you're not behind, so you know where you can see everything. And that is on his Odyssey channel as well. So make sure you guys check that out. We'll have all the links at timandjohnshow.com. And people who are signed up to that, not only are you getting some of the stuff that doesn't make it onto YouTube, but you're getting the stuff, you're making sure that you're getting it all, as they don't notify people, and obviously the shadow banning and stuff they don't like us talking about. And yeah, we've got other headlines. Fidelity announces it's a Bitcoin first world. I mean, that's a pretty big headline. We've got the Hill talking about climate lockdowns. Yeah, pretty big headline. Graphene oxide, that's in something like that. That probably not really going to mention too much because they wouldn't really allow us on here if we're going to talk about that. And of course, we've got our very own John Snyson up in Kazakhstan to talk about the trucker convoy, the Freedom Convoy. And I mean, really, how do you even prepare for a show like this, and where do you even begin? And I mean, I'm like out here working. It's like 8:25 right now. I've been working all day. I was sick on Monday, so I mean, just been one thing after another. And it's just like going straight from work and right into boom. Like, what do we talk about? But I mean, really, the only reason I really wanted to start a podcast in 2016 was really to sort of keep a tally on how much crazy shit basically that I talked about and like all the stuff that had come to fruition, because I wanted to wake people up. I wanted to get people out of this fake left-right paradigm, and I wanted to make sure it affect the world so that way those crazy predictions didn't come true. So I wanted to like work against those predictions. But I mean, now a lot of stuff, that was crazy doesn't even like register as crazy anymore, because the bar has been up so much. I mean, one of the things I think that could be coming out is I honestly do think it's a very good chance if I was betting today, it'd be Hillary 2024. I basically helped start activism where I was actually putting my name out there. First I was Libertarian advisor, then I got pissed off the Libertarian Party, and long story. Anyways, I didn't want Hillary to win because I thought she was going to start war with Russia, and basically that war is basically sort of delayed a little bit because sort of the ultimate end game over here is to eventually have, when the Federal Reserve collapses underneath all of its own debt and hyperbubble and weight, they want to be able to blame it on a boogeyman like Russia or China or the Easter Bunny or who knows. And really, I just want to sort of prevent whatever sort of false flag they're going to do to basically keep the control, keep the narrative going. And, I don't actually want to be really doing a podcast, but I know that I've put so much time and effort and energy into understanding this, not to sound like some egotistical maniac, but, I think that, John and I and other people that we associate with, that we have certain knowledge from just being weirdos that are, we're into this stuff for 18 hours a day for over a decade. And then having the financial knowledge that we're able to piece together a piece of the puzzle that other people don't have, because ultimately everything comes down to the financial system. And I hope, trying to prevent, like a power grid attack by talking about it, trying to prevent a small box attack by talking about it. I don't want hyperinflation. I don't want billions of people to starve to death. I don't want, my children suffering, your children suffering. I don't want to live in a world where psychopaths are basically spraying the sky with aluminum, barium, strontium, sulfuric acid. I don't want to live in the world where the Federal Reserve is basically our slave master. And once they lose control of everything, some major war starts off, like I was just talking about. And, one of the very first things that adorned my first, Facebook page, which really only they allowed me to grow for 2.5 months. It grew to like 32,000 people, a little bit over that in 2.5 months. I was growing faster than like Ben Shapiro. I was reaching like InfoWars type numbers, and then boom, getting kneecapped right in the very beginning. I mean, obviously John getting, he was doing stuff with Josh a little bit longer, and they were putting out videos constantly, and so they got to grow to a really large number. But I was getting just kneecapped right in the beginning, and today, like, I had a ton of optimism back then, because I'm like, if I can do this from a standstill, I can teach other young kids and other people how to do this, and we can just culture jam the system. But then they, through the censorship, they started blocking everybody, so you couldn't get any actual real information out. And so we, like Alex Jones said, we are in an information war. We have been in an information war. And right now, that's why you can say what you want about Joe Rogan, but he is getting attacked 7 ways to Sunday. I'm wearing a Djokovic shirt right now. And yeah, there's, I guess, some questionable things about him, but he's he's the only like top 200 tennis player in the world that's not vaccinated. And and I did start playing tennis about 9 months before the pandemic began. Played one professional match about 2 weeks before quarantine began, lost. So my professional record is 0-1. But I never had any lessons. I just taught myself. And you got to put yourself in the arena. And speaking of being in the arena, that first quote on my Facebook page was from Barry Goldwater, who is a great senator, which is not something, 2 words you ever really put together, but a great senator out of Arizona. And then, of course, unfortunately, his seat went to the piece of shit John McCain. But his quote was, "Extremum in defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue." And I'm sorry for there's like this huge opening rant. It's just like, where do you begin? You had a long work day. You see all this news. It's all crazy. We don't want this to stop. And John and I, myself, I'm putting myself, my family, the career, sort of everything on the line for this truth. Because you think if Hillary gets in, that it's going to be a fun time for me when all of a sudden our banking.
It'll be fun camps.
And the thing is, it's not, people are like, oh well. First, they're like, oh, this stuff doesn't exist. And on the other hand, they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't speak out about this. And if we don't speak out about this, maybe they come for me. Not saying they're going to come for me first. I'm not anyone special. A lot of other people that are, much more high profile than us. And that's, part of the reason why I don't want to get super big, because I don't want to necessarily be, super on the radar. But if they do come after us, then all of a sudden we get more on the radar, and then it Streisand affects things. So, there is some, good to that. But at the end of the day, we're all sort of standing on the shoulders of people like G. Griffin and Barry Goldwater and Ernest Hancock and Dr. Ron Paul and, hundreds of others of lives, thousands of other lives, Yuri Brezmenov, all people who've dedicated their lives to exposing this stuff. And at the end of the day, I don't want my kids to be slaves. I don't want your kids to be slaves. I don't really think that's too much to ask for. I don't want half my money stolen. I don't want to have my money be borrowed into existence. I don't want you poisoning the food, the air, the water. I don't want you raping little kids and drag queen story time.
We need drag
I'm not
queen
really
story
asking for that
time.
much. Don't poison me. Don't poison kids. Don't do all the stuff we just mentioned, and just don't be a bunch of psychopaths. Is that?
Yeah,
really
just leave us the fuck alone. How about that?
Yeah, right. And we're done with the show. Let's not talk about any of the stuff we're just talking
We're
about.
done.
So I'm gonna let John talk now. I think obviously with him being not being from Canada, but living in Canada right now, I think it's what better place to start than to talk about the Freedom Convoy. And you guys finally grew a pair up there. You guys finally like doing something. I couldn't be more supportive of everything that's going on. And I did see an article. I don't have it pulled up right now, but I saw an article where I think the Ottawa government wanted, or some city council guy, somebody in Ottawa in the capital wanted to basically lobby to get the GoFundMe money to go to Ottawa instead of the truckers. And so, you can't make this stuff up. And I will give a quick shout out to Josh Segerson. He had an amazing video where he was posting a lot of cell phone footage from inside the meetings. And there was a guy, so go check out his channel on World Alternative Media on BitChute. And he gave there was this footage where it was showing the police being basically hey, we're going to let you guys move, otherwise you're going to arrest you, and this is our negotiation tactic, and the truckers were holding their line. So I do commend the truckers up there. But John, sorry for that huge freaking rant. I know you're the one who basically helps motivate me to do podcasts, so I will let you talk now. So what's going on in Canada? Let's start with that, and then obviously get into all the other crazy stuff we mentioned.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's crazy time out there, and of course, Mr. Trudeau, he's just totally ignorant. He's one of those I forgot who was in like at the end of like the communist era that stood up amongst all of his people and was talking, and then suddenly you heard one boo and then two boos, and then the whole crowd was booing him, and that kind of like was the end of the whole communist era back in old Soviet Union. So I think we're getting closer to that point where basically this is what
Oh, you've got
Ernest
it. Oh,
Hancock.
you've got the article.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I
Yeah.
found it. Yeah. And this, there's been talk to like they actually GoFundMe was freezing the money, and then basically Ottawa City Councilor, which is like total, like little minion in Ottawa. Look, who cares about Ottawa City? The only thing that's there. I've been there. Actually, you and me we did videos when I was there. I did a video right in front of Parliament talking about the Project Jasper that they had going on, which they abandoned with the central bank digital currency in Canada. But yeah, no, they basically are trying to like they're asking to let's seize $7 million from that people through public opinion, as Ernest Hancock said, raised I think it's now like close to $8 million, the whole GoFundMe campaign. But what you're seeing, there's so much more to what's going on in Ottawa on top of everything. They actually have operation centers closer to the entrance to Ottawa, where they actually have tons of food. They're really prepared. Actually, there's a video of the local police. I don't know if it's the local police or the RCMP in Canada that are actually bringing in food supply to the truckers. And it's funny how the blue collar workers actually care about blue collar workers kind of thing, because they're in the same boat. The police officers, they were asked to either quit the police or get vaxxed here in Canada, and same with the military. There's that call as well, Tim. Like from the same Ottawa police, they're putting out videos there now that well, yeah, we need the military to help us. Like what good is the military gonna really do coming into Ottawa and trying to remove truckers? Like what are they gonna do? Like it's a lot of blockades there. Are they just gonna roll over like the trucks with tanks? Like they can't even get above a truck with a tank. Like it's a big vehicle, so it's and Trudeau is, of course, like he got the trucker flu and went into hiding like a couple of days before the
Coward night.
convoy
Yeah.
entered. Yeah, and it was pretty hilarious. So
What's that meme?
there's
Like you
lots.
got like there was a meme and it was like we're missing and it was 6'2" and it was like a man in blackface and then has fake COVID or something. I mean, I'm like a little bit on
There's
Instagram.
a lot of memes. There's actually Mad Max meme where you say like it's a truck with like fuck Trudeau and then a whole bunch of other trucks beside it, and then like you see Trudeau, like running like in the Mad Max movie kind of thing.
Aren't they calling him
There's
what are they calling him uh Brando or something or
well, it's like there's
Electro
so
Brando?
many, yeah, there's so many things. Like there's actually like a Jurassic Park theme now, where there's like they put Canada geese heads on the raptors while the guy like Trudeau is hiding behind there, and like it's hilarious. Like he's really just getting it. And you know what's even actually just breaking from Canada is this little news here. And so Aaron O'Toole was like the conservative leader here in Canada. He totally failed, like trying to get into power. And but what happened though was that public opinion has gotten so hot, that there's a couple of MPs now that called for his resignation, and sure enough, it happened. And guess who they voted in? It's actually a lady from Manitoba. It's the MP of Portage, Lisgar, and she actually put out like massive support for the truckers. We need freedom of choice, and she got voted the interim leader. Like I feel like we're hitting that public opinion. Where the Conservative Party finally found out that oh shit, like we better get our stuff together, and so it's her and another guy called what's his name, Polivier. He as well like have been calling out the inflation and the whole economic side. Like there's a clip of him actually saying like, hey, where are you getting all this spending money from? And he's like literally asking all the finance people, like all the whole finance group of Canada, like in the finance ministry, and nobody could tell him where the money is coming from. which is basically just deficit spending. It's just debt that they're creating, right? So yeah, they're in deep trouble, Tim. And on top of that, they actually have a blockade at the Montana-Alberta border as well going on right now. I don't know if people are aware of that, but the RCMP tried to remove them, and nobody wanted to move. And then they brought in, they tried to bring in tow trucks, and the tow truckers won't cooperate either.
It'd be
So
funny if the tow trucks came in, like, impounded the police vehicles or something. That would be,
yeah, something like that. Like it's just totally hilarious. Like this is
or
just
didn't they called in sick? Oh, sorry, we all have COVID. So
yeah, so there's people that are saying that, oh, they're just using this to like create total chaos and everything. But
they're
you know, I
terrorists and anti-Semites
oh,
and
you should see
racists
the
and.
I was listening, so I drove home like I was super late on
You have that
Monday
clip of
driving.
Trudeau. You know the clip I'm talking about where he's trying to. I mean, it's so freaking scripted and it's like the
Yeah,
recent one
do we
where
want to
it's
show that clip? Like
I don't
it's
know what is it,
pretty.
like 2 minutes long or something. I've heard it. I don't know where it's at, but I know that you're like really good with this stuff. So I think that is
Yeah,
one that would be, because I mean there's just so much BS and like gaslighting and just projecting, and it's just like a master class in bullshitting. Especially when you got this guy running around in blackface all the time, calling other people racist and like, oh, there's supposedly somebody with a swastika. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I will bet everything that person was an agent provocateur, probably government agent who was probably there doing that, or maybe some sort of leftist trying to frame the right. And again, fake left-right paradigm. It's all
yeah.
BS. But there's no way that real truckers that want freedom are going in there with swastikas. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. And okay, well, one person had a rebel flag. I mean, the whole Civil War was started underneath false pretenses. But anyways, you got that pulled up, or
Just
I'm
one
not,
second,
I'm
I'm
not,
just
I'm not
trying
putting you.
to. I'm just trying to find.
I know I'm putting you on the
Yeah,
spot. And
yeah.
then
Here we go. I think I found it now. So let's see. This is prior. This is right before the coming
It's
into Ottawa.
important to underline that close to 90% of truckers in this country are vaccinated,
bullshit.
like close to 90% of Canadians.
know
Over
it's
the
bullshit.
past many months and years now, Canadians have stepped up to protect each other, to protect our frontline workers, to protect our elders, to protect our young people, to protect people like truckers who are putting food on our grocery store shelves. Canadians have stepped up to do the right thing to protect the freedoms and the rights of Canadians to get back to the things we love to do.
Oh, the right.
We know the way through this pandemic is by getting everyone vaccinated. And the overwhelming majority, close to 90% of Canadians, have done exactly that. The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians who have been there for each other, who know that following the science and stepping up to protect each other is the best way to continue to ensure our freedoms, our rights, our values as a country.
Yeah, so that's kind of that was the initial one. There's one
No,
more,
there was
Tim.
another
Yeah.
one that I saw that was like once
Yeah.
it was like already underway, where he was basically saying it's like racist and anti-Semites,
Yeah.
and we're not going to tolerate that. And that was like really the one that I was referring to. So if you want to go search that one, in the meantime,
Yeah.
though, I am interested in like what sort of like the pulse of the people there is, and sort of like your average. I mean, I don't really buy the number that 90% are vaccinated there, but let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's 70% are vaccinated. Well, A, like, what do you think the real number is in Canada? And B, like, even those people are like your average sort of like slave in Canada saying, screw these guys, or they for the truckers, against the truckers, or, and it, so what's your sort of like general take on what's going on? And is it just some fringe minority? So I don't know if you want to play the clip and then answer those questions, or I can keep rambling to buy you more time to find.
Yeah, if you go on for a couple more minutes there, I just trying to find the stupid clip of this moron. I think I might have found it here. Let's see here.
Yeah,
Just,
so I mean, with Trudeau, I mean, he did, graduate from Klaus Schwab's, little business school. I forgot. Do you know what Klaus Schwab's like school is called, or like his global leaders school? I'm sorry, that you're trying to think while doing this at the same time. But I know that like, Trudeau is like pretty much, one of like the ideal sort of minions like of these guys, and it's someone that Klaus Schwab praises all the time, and someone, when he's not, praising, Xi or praising, all these other, dictators that are just falling in line. So, he really is, like the model globalist of what they want people to do, along with Macron and all the other, cronies they've got in there. But okay, January 31st. This is hopefully this
yeah,
is it.
this is it. This is the like one of the hilarious. Like this is, I think he had one after this, but this is
I
basically
mean, the
what
other
it's.
one was pretty good too. By
Alright.
good, I mean like.
But this one gets
bullshit.
better. This one is a lot better. Okay, here we go.
Freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials
Wow.
are not.
One day
It is an insult to memory and truth.
One day away from Black History
Hate
Month, while he's
can never be the answer.
never.
Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food
Why are you hiding
from the homeless.
throughout? And
We won't give in
intimidated.
to those who fly racist flags. We
That's why I'm
won't
gonna see the
cave
location next to a pile of wood.
to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. To the politicians exploiting people's fears, I ask you to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions. To the nearly 90% of truckers across the country who've gotten vaccinated, who continue working hard to keep us fed and keep our economy moving,
Like none of the plants are moving, nothing's moving on there. That little bitch was behind a green screen, just like I am right now, but looking like it's more believable with the background. I bet he wasn't even outside, probably wasn't even cold, wearing that stupid little jacket, acting like he's tough. Oh my God. I mean, I just wish somebody was out there and like pelted him in the face with a snowball or something. Like how awesome would that be? Metaphorically, a metaphoric information snowball to the face of Justin Castro. But I'm not making any threats. I'm not doing anything because I'm not going to Canada ever again. Which, is, sort of shitty because now that I've got lots of friends that are from Canada and, if there is a lot of nice landscape up there. But I mean, to say that it's just a bunch of racists and anti-Semites and, that the vast majority of Canadians don't stand for this and that. I mean, so what do you think the vast majority of Canadians stand for? And, how many people are buying his load of BS?
Well, let me tell you the vast minority. So like today, I actually got stuck in minus 40 degrees outside with a little bit of wind chill, and I had to seek shelter.
Diamond Hands is, we found out, is the same as negative 40 in Fahrenheit is negative 40 in Celsius. That's like the crossover, or where it's like the same. It's weird.
I think so.
That stat's wrong. I'm saying both of you guys. I didn't look it up, but
yeah. No, but anyways, it was cold as fuck outside, and so I had to walk like 3 miles to find some place, and I found this farmer's house, and so I knocked on the door and I just talked to him for a while, and I was stuck there for 3 hours. But guess what?
Did you have like water, like a big jacket, or like?
Oh yeah, no, I was prepared. I was really pretty cozy, like walking for 3 miles, so I wasn't suffering or anything. Got to prepare for crap like that.
Skis, go get a dog out.
I was missing my cross country skis. I really needed them.
Have Teddy pull you in a sleigh.
I'll tell you, the drift that I was stuck in was half the size of a Chevy Express, so it was pretty nasty. But anyways, it's what's hilarious is that I had a conversation with this guy, and we actually started talking about. He's 71 years old, this farmer, and he was talking about Pierre, how Pierre fucked up everybody, and he was so pissed off at like Pierre was the most disgusting, and he couldn't believe that Trudeau even got in, being his son and knowing what his dad stood for. Well, guess what? Little Trudeau, he made it like 5 times worse. Actually, Pierre Trudeau might not be his dad. There's some rumors that, as you said, we got the Justin Castro, walking around this little totalitarian tyrant that he is. But anyways, the general public, the feel that I'm getting now is it's really turning on to all this, and a lot of people have taken 2 vaxes, and now they're not taking the 3rd because they see through the bullshit. And basically here in Manitoba, it's hilarious because they removed the stats of daily cases because they started to have more cases for actually percentage wise more cases double vaxxed than unvaxxed. And so they changed that. They removed that actually completely now. And they have a 6-week running average, so the numbers look better. But then they are like, oh yeah, you're not in danger when they go into ICU. But if you actually compare the vaccine and unvaxxed and vaxxed with deaths, it's almost actually totally similar. And then of course it got out now that they
say a lot of
inflated.
trigger words for YouTube, or YouTube.
Yeah.
So maybe we talk about jabs or make some symbols to that, because that's I do like reaching some people.
Yeah, some stabs. Yeah.
So stupid we even got to do this.
Yeah, but people that got stabbed, right? And what's really funny is that the narrative was falling apart, and then it came out that people that have been double stabbed, they actually ended up.
Canada's very dangerous. Over 90% of people have been stabbed. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty dangerous place. What's funny is, so he's talking about 90%, but when you look at the actual numbers, it's more like here in Manitoba, it's only 77% now. Triple stabbed people are now peaking out and flattening out at 44%. So how about that, Trudeau? You're trying to push this campaign on yeah, we just need more stabs. Let's stab people with 10 times. They can't die. Gotta stab them enough. Anyways, but it's just showing you that this farmer actually, he said that tons of farmers, he's very well connected in the farming community in Manitoba, and he's saying most farmers, probably he said 70-80% hate the government, and he said that 68% of all the people in Manitoba are government workers. And so here they just came out and so oh, we're gonna reopen slowly and we're gonna be open by spring sometime, and it's just a laugh. Well, actually Saskatchewan is one of the only places that actually care, and Scott Moe there, he's saying we're gonna remove everything by the end of this month apparently. So we'll see. They're he actually backtracked on a lot of stuff. They haven't been near as crazy lockdown as Manitoba or any of the other provinces has been. The actual Quebec tax got rolled back. And funny enough, Trudeau was saying oh, those politicians, supporting these truckers. Oh, guess what? The conservative, actually, we're talking about the conservative politician voted in as an interim leader, one of the heads of the that are praising the truckers. so much about that, Trudeau, and Trudeau fringe politicians. It totally is blowing up in his face. And the reason why they voted the person like that in? Because it's public opinion. They're scared that they're going to lose all their voters if they actually come out against these truckers. And you got to remember, truckers are the old good old cowboys. They're very a lot of them are very individualistic. They're a lot by themselves. They really work great together as a team. They're great at coordinating, as we said. So yeah, it's just I feel like this is just blowing up right in his face, and he's just the total ignorant leader that he is. He's just doubling and tripling down because he thinks he has media on his side, which he does. But it's totally failing. There was actually
how much money did they give the media again? It was $600 million.
600 million, and he actually made fun of it. He thought it was a great idea to make fun of that. That's why I'm not getting bothered at a press dinner or whatever that was. But when it comes down to it, there was actually another thing that's blown up in his face is actually Trudeau's support of the farmer strikes in India. So this Indian, mainstream Indian, news organization on YouTube actually was making fun of how stupid he was. They were saying, because Trudeau is yeah, he's supporting blockades and everything for the Indian government. They were blocking off parliament and stuff in Mumbai, like these farmers that were protesting Monsanto and a whole bunch of other things. That was totally fine. But when they come after Trudeau himself, like they're terrorists and racists and so on, because there might be one guy carrying around, and you know what? There was a kind of a Nazi symbol there. And that was actually on the flag saying, it said something about Trudeau, by the way. Like, it wasn't actually like,
Like it was
it was actually talking about
policies of Nazi. And the thing, like, we used to joke around. I mean, not even joking around, but always
like Djokovic.
Like we would talk about, like papers, please. And now it's like, it's not only papers, please. It's like papers, please, and wear a fucking mask, cover your face. And the papers, please, is not to identify who you are, but to make sure you get stabbed, an infinite amount of times. And so, if you guys want to hear more about that, you can go to John's podcast. He did Ernest Hancock. That is at timandjohnshow.com. It's on John's Odyssey channel. I'm not sure if there's any other places to see that, but those are obviously timandjohnshow.com going to be the best place for that. But we've got so much stuff that, we teased you guys with earlier to talk about. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention, and, we had talked about this guy, actually, I think on the last podcast, we had talked about Richard Fisher, who is a former Dallas Fed head, who said that the Federal Reserve, this is, I think, like 2016 or 17, he said, the Federal Reserve has been running the market on heroin and cocaine, and now they're trying to maintain it on Ritalin. This is like when they were stop money printing, because originally they're going to get their balance sheet from like 4.5 trillion down to zero, and they ended up getting it down to like 3.8 trillion, and then now it's almost 9 trillion. So now they're basically saying that they're going to lower it to some other unannounced level. And and for those of you who are clients of mine or want to become clients of mine, I did give a webinar the day that this came out, going over all the Fed press conference, and then like a huge hour and a half long, like well researched, like spot on, not sort of winging it like I'm doing now, presentation on exactly what is going on. And I'm thinking about releasing that to my email subscribers, cutting off some of the Q&A portion of it. But so just another reason for you guys to sign up to timandjohnshow.com and sign up for the email alerts. But this is the Dallas Fed president, former Dallas Fed head, Richard Fisher, and let's see what he has to say about the market.
What's going to happen now? Do you believe it? Will they follow through?
When I joined the Fed in 2005, we're in the middle of a rate increasing cycle. It ran for 14 different turns consecutively under Alan Greenspan. I think market operators should look at that history, because it took a while to then dent inflation, because there's a lag, and when monetary policy impacts the economy. They know this. They're going to have to proceed deliberately. The worst thing you want to become if your share is Arthur Burns, who let things get out of control. And so at the same time, you don't want to squash the economy. The markets, this is why I believe they're being so gradual and deliberate and telegraphing what they're going to do so that the markets can adjust. But let's face it, Joe, I want to come back to the alcoholic metaphor we started with. The market's been wearing beer goggles for the longest possible time. Everything looks beautiful because money was free. And they just assume the Fed's going to bail them out. I think the strike price on the Fed put has moved significantly. And unless we have a dramatic turn in the markets that indicates it can infect the real economy, I don't believe, under this chair in particular, who has a credit market background, that they will be weak in following through with what they've pronounced.
I don't know about that.
And you know what? I actually had not listened to that clip before, but there was actually a lot of truth in that clip from former Dallas Fed head Richard Fisher. I mean, not the least of it that the market is wearing beer goggles. Just think of like all the money managers who weren't around, in 2007 to 2009. I mean, I actually started the Lehman Brothers crash, and I was managing some money for my school's student managed investment fund, during 2007, 2008. So I was like sort of a part of that. And the first time I ever started to try investing was actually in 1999. And then my grandfather, who was going to give me $1,000 to invest, convinced me not to because everything was crazy and the PE ratios. And the thing I wanted to invest in was actually Bluetooth. And he's like, "Oh, it's crazy. You think people are going to walk around with phones, paying for things, and listening to music on these Bluetooth? And probably wouldn't have ever had to work if I put that $1,000 in Bluetooth back then." But anyways, I'm not bitter about that. So to me that was like $1 billion, and I grew up kind of poor, so that was like yeah, never ended up using that. But anyways,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just
by the way, Tim, I have some thoughts on, like, just to expand on his talk about alcoholism and so on. Basically what has been going on is Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. So Wall Street hedge fund, managers and everybody, including the PhDs over at the Fed, they were all in an Oktoberfest beer tent and had like 1 liter pints, like constantly and then suddenly they ran out of beer. They're getting kind of desperate, and so they just trying to find anything, but there's no more alcohol in there. So what is happening is that basically they're going to wake up with a terrible hangover, when the actual, we're not even in tapering, and the markets are
they got
acting.
moonshine to keep their high going,
Well, yeah, they would have to, go
which
like and
made them
actually brew some.
blind to everything that's going on. Sorry.
So what has happened, Tim, is they got a really bad batch of moonshine, like ethanol spiked moonshine, so they're all going blind, to what is really happening in the real economy. I just don't see like how these guys, are surviving. And funny enough, when I interviewed Chris Galasio, former $8 billion fund manager from Fidelity, he told me that, like, he said, like probably 95, 99% of all the fund managers has no clue what we're talking about, Tim, here. Like they have no understanding. Like they're just watching their little numbers and just live on. They don't understand anything about macroeconomics whatsoever.
I mean,
Like
I've had the opportunity to, working for like a major mutual fund house to get out of when I was out of college, where getting to talk to people who manage like $50 billion, and they have no fucking idea about any of this stuff that we maybe they do now, but certainly back then. And actually, I was working with people who had the best, like according to Barron's, like 10-year track record, basically from 2008 up until 2015 when I left. That was just a coincidence, but it really was. I'm not trying to like have like a humble brag on that because I didn't really have anything to do with that. But I did see where the tea leaves are going. But one of the things he did talk about was how the Fed's put is further away than before, and I'm not really sure if I really believe that. And that video was from about 6 days ago, or by the time you guys end up seeing this, 7, 8, 9 days ago. And I think a lot has changed. We have like the worst job numbers are out, and it's weird that we're back to bad news is good news, because then the bad news means that maybe there's more chance the Fed eventually printing more money. So I'm actually not out here like calling for a gigantic stock market crash or any like long prolonged crash at this stage of the game, because I think it's only like a matter of time for this excuse where, I mean, let's remember the pedal is still down right now. We have not put on the brakes yet. We're still printing money. That's going to be going on for the next 2.5 months. And then at which point it's going to stop. And I think even just stopping that will be enough without even raising rates. And so now when you've got, this perfect storm is brewing, again, not going to get into the whole thing. We've got a whole podcast episode called Perfect Storm is Brewing Again, which is like the last podcast we did. So go check that one out. And, it's just like that Fed put, I think is not as far away as Richard Fisher is talking about. But yeah, the market does have beer goggles, and there's no way they can balance this tightrope of stopping inflation and not crushing the economy. Just like there's no way that Augustus Carson's can keep eating fucking Big Macs and not somehow weigh over 400 pounds. Like
it would be like on TMC, it would be like your 1,000-pound life instead of 600-pound life. That's where he's going to end up. It might become the new normal, Tim. Like we're gonna have 1,000-pound guys now, so you never know. He might survive it, Tim, and they'll win in the end, and suddenly he's gonna slim down and become this slender guy at 150 pounds or something like that. But yeah, no, it's a total disaster what they're doing right now. And what's really funny is that when I talked to this fund manager as well.
You're giving me a perfect segue into total disaster, and that's never.
Okay, let's go.
Okay,
let's go.
So speaking of total disaster, thanks, John, for teeing me up with that and having a big softball and not being able to come back from this. Is the Federal Reserve about a week ago announced that they're having, about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, announced their money and payments, the U.S. dollar in the age of digital transformation. Now, unfortunately, my computer crashed and I had to restart it, and I did have all this highlighted and it didn't save to my highlighting app. But, essentially sort of like the quick background on this is that, this paper is written in a tone to suggest that, oh, don't worry, this is just sort of us talking and it's not a done deal and we're going to have public outreach, but it's not set in stone, so don't worry, which means you should really fucking worry. And you know what, the reason I'm swearing right now is because me swearing isn't going to fucking matter when they have everybody by the balls and you're stuck in their system and you're not going to be able to get out, because this is the mark of the beast. And this was the reason why I didn't get into Bitcoin early on, because I thought that the underlying blockchain technology was going to be used to enslave people. But however, it's not going to be Bitcoin to enslave people. It's going to be the underlying blockchain technology when it's used. And yeah, they're going to attack Bitcoin. It's the whole other subject. And yeah, I know the ties that Bitcoin has to Bilderberg, and I was probably one of the first people to ever talk about that and break that down and expose it myself without relying on anybody else's research. But they're going to probably try to crash Bitcoin even harder, or maybe it goes right back up and maybe it goes to 100,000 and they drop it down to 20, and then they say, hey, we need to go and move everybody to a stable coin, or they just try to propagandize to get you there, or they turn the stable coins into Fed coin. And there's lots of attack vectors for how they can do this, but ultimately they're not going to win with controlling Bitcoin. However, they are going to try to propagandize a lot of people to get their money in there. And maybe it occurs when the bond market blows up, especially like in Europe, when you've got all these negative interest rates, and you've got in America. And so paradoxically, the dollar is probably actually going to get much stronger in the interim as all this stuff is going on, because in Europe, they've got negative interest rates, which basically makes a lot of capital flow coming to America. And so I know, it doesn't get a lot of good headlines saying this stuff. And a lot of, people have, criticized me in the past for saying this, especially like in February 2020 Anarcho-Poco Q&A that I did. But, paradoxically, the dollar will probably get stronger, but then that strength will then mean it's harder for other countries to then pay back their debts that are denominated in dollars. That strength isn't going to lead to either further weakness, and ultimately it is going to collapse, but it's not going to be like the exact pattern. And who knows? I don't know the exact pattern.
But again, Tim, it's like dollar strength, right? Like, because you still have inflation, you still have devaluation locally of the dollar, even though it's stronger versus all the other currencies. Like I definitely think like it looks like who is it? Grant Will? No, I forgot his name. The dollar milkshake theory guy. I think he's pretty spot on. And of course, like, he's not like the dollar will be the strongest. Like, he's just saying that the dollar will win and then it will lose big time. Basically, after all the other fiats. What we got to understand, like, this is hilarious, Tim. That farmer that I talked to, he said, like, we got a global, like, the system is the same and it's a global debt problem. Like, that comes from a guy that lives in the middle of nowhere, that is a farmer that sells onto a market. That it seems like these guys understand something, and they see
much more qualified than anybody who has a PhD in economics or a Nobel Peace Prize, like the homeless Paul.
Yeah, because he's a business owner. Like, he does this for a living. Like, he lives and breathes. Like this cattle farming that is done. Like, he's a cattle ranch. Like, he's done this for I think, like he said, like 40 years, right? So he has a little bit of a clue what's going on. And of course, they talk together, all these guys, and they talk, globally. Like, he was also telling me, the government screwed them over during the whole, like, what was it? It was a scare of mad cow disease. Like, he said that they basically, he thought that, the U.S. planted a mad cow. It actually came from the U.S. And then they shut down the border. And then the Americans didn't want any Canadian cows. The actual Japanese government was going to bring in, because there's no facilities to actually process the meat. So the Japanese government was, a corporation was going to bring in, to process the meat in Canada and then ship it to Japan. But guess what? The government said no. Totally a great thing, to devastate the economy. But what he did, like, this is hilarious too. He actually told me that he bought up a whole bunch of cows because he knew that you would have the election coming up in the U.S. And guess what? When Bush got in at the time, like, he actually just reopened, and then he made actually a crap ton of money because he betted on the politicians, doing something because they wanted to get elected. How about that?
Yeah, and so, I mean, if you guys do, want to hear more about the Federal Reserve and everything that was going on with that, I mean, you guys can go check out the podcast I did with Ernie, because we've got so much stuff to talk about that, I just want to give like the highlights of what's going on. But, going with this whole central bank digital currency, theme, we do have, I guess it's not the theme, but, what we're currently on right now, we got China's digital Yuan wallet now has 260 million individual users. Thank you, John Snyster, for this article. And I've not read the article, but I mean, this is just quite the stunning headline. I think it really does speak to itself, because I knew they had a lot in there. I didn't know that 260 million. And let's not forget, like, people, hoard themselves out to get into this for literally for the opportunity. I think they got like, a lot of people got like $30 in like some sort of lottery. And then if you're really special, you had the opportunity to win free laundry for the year. So I mean, when you could print money out of nothing and then use that to then buy off the population, they're buying people off for the opportunity to win free fucking laundry and $30. Do you think it's like not too hard to buy people off around the world, especially like when about 2 billion people are so poor in third world country that they're not even that they don't even have the internet? I mean, actually, John just got Starlink the other day, so he's up there. He wasn't too far behind the third world, I guess, living in Canada. Sorry, John. But the thing is, like, they're buying people off for basically nothing and getting them into the slave grid, where in China it's directly tied into social credit score, whereas in the rest of the world it's more like stealth social credit through the obviously the vaccine passports that will then the stab passports, which will then morph into that. And that is something that I'm sure shit is going to happen unless people like me and you, people watching and spreading this information, stops this. And it's like the main thing I've been warning about is, before I even knew what a central bank digital currency was, like I always knew there's going to be some sort of mark of the beast in order to buy and sell. And that's not from reading Revelations. Like, literally, I like figured this stuff out. And then first time I gave like a talk in this stuff was like 2009, and someone was like, "Oh, you're just ripping off the Book of Revelations." And I'm like, "I've never even read the Book of Revelations. I didn't even know what it even was, even because I was growing up Catholic, and I literally always thought that was a scam. And I always hated it. I always, at a young age, knew. I mean, there's like no pedophilia or anything that happened to me, or I didn't see any of that, but I knew about it because my mom wasn't Catholic, and she was always sort of like shitting on the Catholic Church, probably for rightful reasons. And so having like one parent that was and one parent that wasn't, I sort of was like exposed to a lot of the bad stuff that was going on. So I never had any, some people like, "Oh, he's Catholic, Illuminati now," but no, I've denounced that when I was 17 years old. And aside from going to like maybe 1 or 2 funerals, have not been like a wedding, have not been back into that place. Every time I go into like a Catholic church, and it's not to say Catholic people are bad. I mean, plenty of good Catholic people that are out there, but it's just obviously like the hierarchy and the leaders. And you go to Vatican, which I've not been, but there's basically like serpents everywhere, and there's like no crosses. And and one thing that like Sam Tripoli talks about, and I'm getting into like stuff I didn't plan on talking about now, is that that basically, by them, having Jesus on a cross, it's basically like them sort of taking like a victory lap. Like they're never showing pictures of like smiling Jesus or happy Jesus, or or talking about like the money changer aspect of things. It's always about them taking their victory lap with him being hung up. And I think but why is there really no crosses and a lot of religious symbolism in the Vatican, and why is there's like lizards and serpents and all sorts of weird stuff going on? I mean, that's probably fodder for another podcast of not crazy stuff I wanted to talk about, but here we are back on the crazy train. But another thing I wanted to mention too that I did talk about earlier was that Fidelity explains why we live in a Bitcoin first world, plain and simple. And they just launched like a 28-page paper yesterday on this. And the asset manager Fidelity says Bitcoin should be considered first and separate from all other digital assets that have come after it. This is huge, considering that Fidelity Digital Assets Division website opens with, "We envision the future where all types of assets are issued natively on blockchains or represented in tokenized format." The multi-chain focused company recognized Bitcoin's inherent superiority in their latest report. And then, for those of you who are listening right now, it does have basically a chart and shows, durability, divisibility, fungibility, portability, verifiable, scarce, track record, and compares gold, Bitcoin, and fiat. It does say that Bitcoin is fungible. I mean, because some Bitcoin could be tied back to Silk Road, and other Bitcoin is like what they call virgin Bitcoin. I would actually argue it's not fungible, and something like Monero and Pirate Chain or any other privacy coin is much more fungible than Bitcoin. But that's really splitting hairs and getting into nerd dork stuff that most people don't care about. So we'll just sort of leave it at that.
But getting back to also, like, they talk about tokenization and blockchainization of assets and everything. Well, guess what, Tim? when me and Ernie went through like our whole like 3.5 hour crazy spiel on the economy, we we were diving a little bit into the DTCC, and guess what their main focus has been in 2019 and 2020? It's blockchain development. So there.
Let's tell all the listeners who aren't complete nerd dorks like us what DTCC is. It's a Depository Trust Clearing Corporation. Is that it?
Yeah.
Or something like
Yeah,
that?
but I believe so. Yeah, and so basically they are the
So they
central
basically,
entity.
they basically are the ones who have the stock, and then there's other, like people that
Yeah.
then own those. Go back to our episode with Melody Krell, where I believe we did get
Yeah,
into
exactly. Yeah, because they basically own all the assets, and people just basically own representations of them, and then they just do the central, clearinghouse moving. They actually want to make everything digital, though. They don't want any of the stock certificates or hold any of that. But they've been working on that since funny enough, it started in the 70s, Tim. They started
that.
to,
I thought that I
really,
was ahead of the times because I was
yeah,
talking about how basically all of the financial assets would be tokenized and giving
yeah,
speeches on this going back to 2017 when I first sort of had this like epiphany about what Ethereum was relative to Bitcoin. But first you've got to understand what Bitcoin is to understand how it's different than Bitcoin. And again, not making any like investment recommendations or pitches, just talking about the underlying technology and how it can be used to either free you or enslave you, just like a gun can be used
yeah. It's
to stabilize
you
or
know.
save you.
Yeah, you know what it is, Tim? It's ever since I found Bitcoin, I came at it from a historian type of perspective. I was super excited when I heard about Bitcoin. And what's funny enough, in 2014, I wrote an article called "The Rise of the Bitcoin Empire," and I actually compared it to the SDR. What would be the next world reserve currency? Funny enough. And now you're seeing, corporations and even countries, making it into forms of legal tender. I think in the future, Bitcoin probably could be an international settlement mechanism. I don't know. Maybe it's just for free countries, that would use it, or will it, actually be, potentially, the grid that the elites will use at the point when like Jamie Dimon says it's going to reach 1 million. What's funny is we talked about the Bitcoin price. I believe like it'll settle down at a way higher level than it was last time, last 4 years ago. What's going to happen is it's just going to go up from there again, and potentially like through that whole, you got the stock to flow kind of model that models how Bitcoin actually halves every 4 years, right? So what they're looking at, like when it halves again, like you just get that massive run up, and this time we ended up at 68. I was actually way off on my prediction, by the way. I predicted like 125. No, I think it was 100 to like 300 or something. I thought it could go to, but I was way off. I think that Jamie Dimon is not probably far off. He said like in 4 or 5 years or whatever he said, it could be $1 million. And who knows where we're getting, because it's getting pretty bad with inflation around the world. Like at home in Norway right now, my family is just talking about how bad the energy bills have gone up. Like some people are paying. I saw an article. There was a guy that paid 700% more on his energy bill. Basically, went from the 117 kroner up to 1.17 million kroner. So that's like 1,000% increase. And the government has come in and actually is paying now 55% of people's energy bills, Tim. But it was all created by the government lockdowns. All these, insanity and total disruptions in the whole supply chain. Like I was talking to the farmer, he said like they're struggling to just get parts, for their farm equipment, having things running. And like he's like, this is like a third world country now. He said like we basically are struggling to find anything. And yeah, it's insane. And then of course, yeah, let's watch this one. This one's too fun. It actually goes right into. I gotta watch her.
If you wanted to keep talking over it, I
Yeah.
can.
Well, basically, this is really cool. Like it's Freedom Tunes, but it's basically this guy, in the store. He's like, yeah, it's so, I can't, afford it anymore. Like prices are so high, and then the Fed comes in. That's that guy there. He's like, hey,
That looks like
inflation is only 7%.
Looks like a jacked Neil Kashikari.
Yeah, and actually Neil Kaskari is my buddy on LinkedIn. I hang out with him on LinkedIn.
For those
Of
of you who are
course.
listening, there's a cartoon guy who's going into a dollar store and the price of everything is skyrocketing, and then it shows these security guards who are supposed to be the Fed, according to John.
Yeah.
who are then hassling them. I didn't know it was getting into all this. I haven't watched this. I know that you had sent this over, but it does. But we'll have all this in the show notes.
Yeah, it's just funny. Guys gotta watch it. It's all about, like he's saying, like it's 70%. No, you're wrong. And then it's like, well, we're in California, and then he grabs like this steak, and then like the price has gone up, so it's not 950, like it's 1,000. So now he's actually, because it's 950, like you're not taken for robbery if you take it, but at 1,000 because inflation went up so fast, you actually get dragged away by the police at the end. It's hilarious. It's really funny for those of you that are economics geeks, anyways.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And speaking of being taken for, the Israeli government tightens restrictions on large cash transactions from August 2022. Payment in businesses and cash in the amount of basically $1,875 US or more will be banned. And so just mentioned Israeli, which means I have to be obviously, and this is going to be taken out of context someday. It means I'm obviously anti-Semitic. If you can't you can't say the word Israel, and God forbid mention anything, even though Jesus did warn about the money changers, and here we go, that you've got to basically submit to the crown's money, and you can't use too much. This is like you're already using their slave transaction money to begin with, but now you can't even use too much of it because they want to have the grips on everybody, and which is one of the theses of why I think Bitcoin, when we eventually get into this new paradigm, why it's going to go absolutely crazy, because you're either going to be in this track, trace, control
it's
system, or you're not. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, there's two options: their money or the people's money.
Yeah.
And and that's why you even have. But this is not going to be an easy ride. This is not going to be. I'm not one of these YouTubers, Bitcoin people who are constantly saying it's always going to go up and hyping it, and I've got this Ripple bag and keep going up and blah. No, it's going to be a wild ride. At the end of the day, when the dust is settled and the music stops, maybe at the beginning of the music stops, it's not going to be great if they cut off the power or they do something like that. But at the end of the day, when you only have two choices, and it's either in the Fed system or in another system, I think at that point, in that paradigm shift, especially when after the dollar gets strong enough to then crash, then at that point it's going to be a whole new ball game. And then what if the government does come in and confiscate Bitcoin that's on exchanges? Okay, I don't know how much Bitcoin's on exchanges. Please, somebody.
Yeah, but exactly. Get yourself off of
it. Let's say they confiscate 3 million Bitcoin, and already like 4 or 5 million Bitcoins lost. Okay, well now that's a much more scarce asset. People around the world are not going to automatically sell it. They're going to use decentralized exchanges, take it further underground. And this is talking about something that's already happening. Like they already have decentralized exchanges. Right now, because the gas fees which is in Ethereum, it's called gas fees in order to move, are outrageous and through the roof, which is why they need to get their crap together. Otherwise, something else will supplant this. And the thing is, like, Bitcoin is a money system and like a chaos hedge to me, not necessarily a safe store of value, but it's like a long-term.
It's an off the grid system. Like you're basically off the monetary grid. So when that switch comes, if you're not in assets that are outside of that control grid of US dollar denominated assets, you're going to be screwed. You're going to basically, like, it could be like a Simon Dixon, what he was saying to me when I was in Acapulco like 3 years ago. He was saying that, they're just going to let the system crash, and then they're going to be like, hey, we got our new CBDC over here, guys. If you want your money back, all the money that you lost, just come over here. You get all your money back. But if you want to, just leave it in the system, you lose everything. So that could also,
I've talked about this stuff for so long, and now it's here. And like so many smart people I know who are even into Bitcoin don't even know that this is a thing. Like super, super smart guys, of like some of the smartest people I know, they don't even know that this is right around the corner, or that this paper's been released, or what a CBDC even is, or they think it's something you smoke, CBD or something. But getting back to the Fidelity paper, traditional investors typically apply technology investing framework to Bitcoin, leading to the conclusion Bitcoin as a first mover technology will be easily supplanted by a superior one or have lower returns. However, as we have argued here, Bitcoin's first technological breakthrough was not as a superior payment technology, but as a superior form of money. As a monetary good, Bitcoin is unique. Therefore, not only do we believe investors should consider Bitcoin first in order to understand digital assets, but that Bitcoin should be considered first and separate from all other digital assets that come after it. And and then it does have a graph that shows stable coins is one bucket, DeFi is another bucket,
stable coins,
NFTs as another bucket, and then they're all sort of like tied into Ethereum, which could be something like Ethereum if they don't get their stuff together, that then is sort of then tied into Bitcoin. And, you know, and the thing is, like, these other things are much more speculative, but they're not really necessarily, I don't think they're going to be successful supplanting Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is supposed to be doing right now. But that's not to say they don't supplant it as like a Web 3.0 or as like an application network, or someday maybe the stuff then gets built on another layer on top of Bitcoin, which, you know,
Yeah, it could be like the TCP/IP protocol for all of our
well,
internet.
originally, like, Ethereum was I mean, obviously, you know, the quick version of this is Vitalik Buterin wanted to, I forgot the other guy's name. It's Yahani Mahalahav or something. Well, actually, we did interview. I did interview him. He is
There's another guy as well, like from
and,
Toronto in Canada as well. that was
Cardano,
part-
the Cardano guy.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name right now. I've interviewed him too. So damn, what's his name? It's oh man, it's gonna drive me nuts. And some of those guys are kind of social justice warriory, but oh man, that is gonna absolutely drive me nuts. And I'm, you know, how do I not know this name? Cardano founder. I just misspelled it, but Charles Hoskinson. Okay, that's so basically they wanted to develop basically like Ethereum on the Bitcoin blockchain, but the Bitcoin core developers were holding them back. And I mean, I guess to their point, they didn't want, you know, basically to be using like more experimental stuff that could mess up the underlying confidence of Bitcoin if it's not released properly. And so they sort of poo-pooed his idea. So then he took his idea, and then, you know, long story short, created Ethereum, which is basically, you know, like this kind of global, worldwide, you know, computing network where you can build applications on top of it. So then that way you don't have to build something on like Microsoft Azure that shuts you down, or Amazon Web Services that shuts you down, or AWS, or you know, obviously, you know, all these big globalist, you know, tech companies that, you know, have shut me down, have shut you down, have shut a lot of the favorite people that we like down. And so, like, you could have like this app store of the future where you build it on something like Ethereum, where they can't necessarily shut you down, or something like Ethereum. And so,
Like a Tron, like Tron is one that I actually hold in my portfolio, by the way. That are similar, that doesn't use gas or anything.
and
It's
when
also
was
a
the first
platform.
time I ever talked about Ethereum on video? Oh, let's see. I did a Facebook Live before I started doing podcasts in May 2017 when it was under $100. So yeah, it's crashed down to like, I don't know what it was, like 30 times value when I, you know, first started talking about this. And that I mean, I gave all the caveats about how risky it is, and, you know, not saying to go invest in it and this at the time, but, you know, do your own research. But, you know, just letting you guys know something I was doing, which is not something I do very much, especially as a financial advisor. But quick plug, if you would like to be able to buy crypto on sale, and not saying we're at the exact bottom over here and we're still in a downward trend right now, but, you know, you can use this on sale moment. You know, if you have Bitcoin in or if you have an IRA right now, you can have some of that in, you know, you could have it in physical gold or silver, or like the ETF version of it. I mean, there's kind of pros and cons to both. I mean, personally, I think it's better to have, you know, the gold and silvers at your home in non-IRA, but, you know, a lot of people do have their money there. So also, you know, we can put it into like a Roth IRA where those potential gains then would be tax-free. That's what I'm doing. I've got a Roth 401k. We can open those up where it's actual Bitcoin now. And and I had another way of doing it. Now it's much faster. And we've got a few other guys coming on, so I need to get them fat and happy and all trained up. And so in the beginning, you know, you're going to be getting me when you talk to when you
Don't get them to the size of, you know, Carson's though.
yeah, not that fat and happy. Another nerd dork inside joke. And I say nerd dork because that's something where, you know, Sam Tripoli on Cash Jetties talks. That's, you know, the phrase that he uses. So shout out to him. Then yeah, here's another crazy article over here where it shows that the metaverse real estate sales top 500 million and are projected to double this year. So, you know, that's pretty wild. Of course, you know, that's like the Decentraland and Sandbox, and obviously you've got, you know, a lot of more globalist competition coming in that space, and the way of Meta, which is, you know, Facebook, and I saw their stock crater today, I think down 20%, and then you know, Microsoft's, you know, they were in there too. You know, this news just got released today, kind of skipping around here. U.S. companies shed 301,000 jobs. I mean, I don't mean to laugh. It's just like, you know, you type in, you know, U.S. unemployment, and it's talking about just like how many open jobs there are, and like most articles, you know, obscure this one, and it's, you know, very hard to see. I'll link this in the show notes, but this is an InfoWars Greg Reese report where this guy does amazing work. And, you know, he has talked about this in the past, but about the graphene oxide in the stabs. Let's not talk about that here because we don't need to get
By the way, RFID technology is something I work with on a daily basis with my
Well, let's
access
talk
control
about
system.
here and get banned. Just kidding. No, I know.
Yeah, no, so I know all about it. Like, it's pretty crazy though, like those basically nano RFIDs. That's just taking it to a whole nother level. Samsung and a whole bunch of others are making them right now. And you can basically just put it in anything. Like, since it's nano, you could fit it in basically, vaccine. Or no stab
Oh,
or
it's that. And not a vaccine. No, that's Russian disinformation, John. Russian,
Yeah.
Russian, and anyone else is
Well,
Russian.
by the way, you know who's behind the convoy? Let me break it to you. It's the Russians.
Damn it, John, you teed me up for that perfectly
given
again. Here we go.
Canada's support
Oh.
of Ukraine in this current crisis with Russia. I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but there is concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, but perhaps even instigating it from the outset.
Yeah, I'm sure it was the Russians that made that gain about an extra 70 pounds she's holding too. But you know what? When you're trying to go and enslave people, you know what? That's when we don't pull punches when you're trying to enslave humanity. When you're working for disinformation agents, that the Russians, it's the Russians who are going and forcing Canada to have all these absolutely outrageous mandates. It's the Russians who are destroying everything. It's the Russian. I mean,
it's Cuba. It's Cuba. It's Castro Jr. that is, trying to, destroy Canada, make it into a communist gulag.
I'm not some like Russian apologist, and I hate that they've even got to like make that little caveat to all this stuff. And I dated like a Russian Ukrainian girl in high school, and so maybe that makes me some Russian disinformation agent. The first reason I got on Facebook in the beginning was a Russian girl that in 2004 that told me about it. So
I worked with a team of Russians, by the way, Tim. With something called UOS. It unfortunately it didn't go anywhere. Like we did an independent exchange offering and it failed. But anyways, that team, actually one of the guys that was the head, one of the head developers there, I have chats with him quite often, and he lives in Moscow, and he hates Putin. It's pretty hilarious. He worked with the Russians, but they hate Putin. It's you know what? Nobody likes these leaders around the world because they're pretty ignorant. Like you got more totalitarians like Putin, and then you got just blatant authoritarians like Trudeau, and Biden is trying to be one, but really fails at it miserably. I think Trudeau as well, like, is just making himself look like a fool. And of course, during this whole thing, they're also trying to prop up, like trying to scare everybody that, we're going to war, like Russians are going to invade Europe. Like they're, I was looking at Norwegian news, of course, like they were like, yeah, the Russians might come in, in up north there on the Russian-Norwegian borders. They're all like trying to scare the crap out of people again, because remember what scared us, into getting stabbed all the time. It's a little thing, but this time it's a big thing, and it's Mr. Putski over there, wanting to like, hey, how about we drop a nuke on Russia and then see what happens? He'll just unleash hell on earth. So it'd be fun. It'll be nuclear winter. We can stop global warming with a nuclear Holocaust winter. There you go. I got a solution. Let's do it.
Let's
nuke Moscow right now to stop climate change.
We can stop the spread of COVID by killing everyone. We can take all Americans' guns by having an all-out civil war. I mean, if they really cared about our safety, they wouldn't be doing this stuff. If they really cared about our safety and our health, they wouldn't be trying to start a war with Russia and goad them into it. And from my understanding, that like the Russian troops that are massing on the border are actually like in a place that's like about like 120 miles outside the border. That's actually closer to Moscow than it is to the Ukrainian border. I mean, that's just from.
Well, it doesn't really matter like where it is or whatever. It's like you got the
propaganda.
NATO troops are all amassing on Russia's border all across. Like they put up the missile shields now. I used to be up in the Russian-Norwegian border, and they actually put up the missile shields up there like 4 years ago. And you wonder like, why is Putin so mad at NATO? It's like actually NATO moving on like closer and closer to Russian territory, and as soon as like he puts his troops and like he has people in Ukraine that likes him, on the Russian side, that actually they voted to annex Crimea into Russia, but the Russia didn't accept it at the time, by the way. And you know what? who got installed as as an interim leader during the time? Like I forgot what time was it again? Like 20. I forgot when it was, like this whole Ukrainian crisis, right? Oh, it was a Neo
2014,
NAZI, that they actually put in there.
For
Yeah, that's
non-Canadian viewers, Z means Z, and
yeah,
Canadian.
yeah. Anyways, no, this is getting insane fear mongering as usual. The economist probably would love war because you get inflation, and then you could destroy the debt that you had and print a
And
whole bunch of
a
currency.
scapegoat. I mean, we never had World War One
Yeah.
till we had a Federal Reserve. Never had World War II till we had a Federal Reserve. Never had a Great Depression till we had the Federal Reserve. Now, probably never going to have the Greater Depression. And the thing is, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the stock market crashes. Like, you could have a depression where the average person is basically poor and despondent and can't afford the basic necessities of life. There's already a lot of people that can't afford electricity, already can't afford food, or already on assistance in some way or another. This isn't like a future speculation. It's already here. And so then you get people, poor, getting dumbed down to the food and air and water and propaganda that's going on. And you create this like under slave class, Cloward and Piven type strategy to then basically undermine the entire voting system, to then have the voters then vote themselves, goods from the public trough that then eventually collapses things. And, like Alexander de Tocqueville, I believe it was him, talked about that. And it's weird that even though I went to a liberal arts school in New York, they made us take classes where they were teaching us that stuff. So if I was able to glean that information off a liberal arts school, like how come all these, idiot professors can't understand that we're repeating history again and again and again? And, we have talked about so many different things today. We didn't get into it, climate lockdowns. It didn't get into Hillary 2024. I know that you were saying that, was it like a junior world economic, let's tease people for another future, maybe it's a show that you do, or maybe it's a show that we both do, but it was like a junior globalist leaders club thing that was it like a junior World Economic Forum or junior?
No, for sure. It's let's see, the Young Global Leaders, I believe, and it's actually a forum that they have. By the way, let's see here. Let's go to, like, this is just a little tidbit here. There's so many people. The initial Young Global Leaders at the World Economic Forum in 1992 had Angela Merkel, Lawrence Summers was in there. Actually, Paul Krugman, Tim, like not this year that I have up here in 2009, but Lawrence.
So this was Boris. It's really small right now. Former science advisor, named as one of the 3 executives of Jeffrey Epstein's estate.
And look at, like, it's Zuckerberg. Oh, and guess who else was there together with Zuckerberg? Is Stefan Bargel, the current CEO of Moderna. This was 2009, by the way. And yeah, they're just all over the place. They're like, you find like them every year, and this is just the earlier ones. Like, me and Tim looked at the other ones, of course. Like this,
that was only for 1 year. I didn't even realize that, because we have
no, this is year by year, and actually these are just what they call prominent. Like, look at this list. This is actually the ones that are getting put in here. The Crown Prince. Oh, look at this. The Crown Princess of Norway, the Marit. She was in here, as a young global leader at this year. This is 2010. She got like married into, the Norwegian royal family. They all hated it, and so I guess she had to be like a little bit brainwashed, go in here. Like lots of royals are in here. A bunch of Rothschilds, by the way, are in there as well. Like, these are some of the, like, from 2004 till now. Like, these are some prominent, people that have been in Young Global Leaders, like Alexander Soros, Tulsi Gabbard, Daniel Crenshaw, Mark Zuckerberg, David Rothschild.
Fuck that guy. I have not liked that guy from the second I ever laid eyes upon. Well, both my eyes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Crenshaw. But I will say, it does suck only having one eye, because for about a month and a half, my eye was pulsing, and then I had to wear like an eye patch for a couple of days, and I felt like freaking Dan Crenshaw or something. This is recently. It was from basically from Halloween up until.
I guess he wanted to try to get into the Young Global Leaders. Me and Tim never got asked. The closest I ever got was I was in Junior Chamber International. Where guys like J.F. Kennedy, George Bush, a whole bunch of other elitists, they were part of the UN's global leaders, the political, more like a little bit of more political. But these globalist organizations are basically there to treat these younger kids or whatever you want to call them, like younger adults, into becoming real, colluding global, corporate fascists and work together, as corporations and politicians and so on around the world. That's basically what they've been grooming them at. And of course, Klaus is very, proud of what he's accomplished. And really, like, what's funny is, like, everybody's focusing on the World Economic Forum, but what we got to understand too is, like, the World Economic Forum works hand in hand with the United Nations. They have the same exact goals, that the United Nations, the Agenda 21,
all
ESG
interconnected
goals.
leaders, and they're all
Yeah.
they got all their tentacles and all the different think tanks and consensus forming. But ultimately, things do come back to public opinion, and when you've got all these truckers who are out there blocking things, I mean, that's how stuff ends up getting done. But we just wanted to tease the people with that for a future
Yeah.
report, and I think this is a great place to end it. And you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because for everyone on the betting lines who were betting that you were going to say FSB, I don't think you said it this episode, and I also don't say that. I also don't think you said Manitoba. I think you did say that Winnipeg, because that one new lady that was actual cisgender female, not nowadays you're only in the news if you're like a guy that became a girl. But yeah, I think you did not manage to say.
No, I did I said Manitoba once because she was a MP for Manitoba, unfortunately.
Okay, and then you did bring up Norway too at the very end with Norway, Russia, because I was gonna say, oh, he didn't bring up Norway either, but then you brought up Norway at the very end. So
yeah, the Crown Princess
like
of Norway was hanging out there.
We need to create, like, one of our viewers can create like a bingo game of like things that everything that you mentioned at least once a show. And
well,
then
Tim, one more hilarious little tidbit here. Okay, so I got a little
don't mention
envelope
FSB because I don't want you to fuck it up. So.
No, there's no SSB. I got a little envelope from Lebanon, by the way. And actually, guess how the banks in Lebanon is making money right now? They're actually selling their dirty, useless fiat because people are collecting it like me. And so this one actually came from, Nathalie Abi Chinini, from the Blum Bank Concord branch in Verdun. And so that's how the banks are making money down in Lebanon. They can't use their useless fiat, but they could sell it to foreigners that are collecting it for to put on my wall here. I got my wall of shame all around me here with dirty old fiat. So yeah, I just had to mention that the new business model of banks will be eventually in Canada and the US, they would sell the worthless fiat. Look at what happened to the 100 trillion dollar. This one is worth $200 now because they actually got rid of a whole bunch. The fiat is more worth than it ever was in history. So what you got to do is you got to buy the really high denomination notes and you make a crap ton of money down the line. That's
hodl. Not necessarily investment advice. Do not put all of your money into worthless fiat from third world dictators. Just speaking of which, I know it's not third world and it's a G20 country, and I wasn't meaning to bring this up, and I forgot that I'd read this. I have a thing where I saved notes in Evernote, but then for some reason my phone is messing up and it's like it's saying it's saving it, but it's not saving it, and it's super frustrating. I need to figure that out. But anyways, I did read this story today. It wasn't from this site, but I quickly just searched again. But Turkish President Erdogan fires government statistics chief as inflation skyrockets. I think they said it's like 36% inflation, and so like they've fired like several different statistics people. They've fired.
I just fired two central bank heads, Tim.
Yeah,
that's two central bank chiefs.
I was talk about. And so, and actually, I just bought a gun that came from Turkey because part of me was like, well, if they're going underneath like this massive inflation, then maybe it's gonna be harder to get this gun in the future. And there's one that I wanted to get, and so that's why I got a Turkish gun, because I'm like, all right, well, this was like a cool one I wanted to get and had been recommended to me, and I knew that what's going on with Turkey, who knows what this,
well, he wants the Ottoman Empire. That's basically what Erdogan wants. He wants to rebuild the good old Ottoman.
But then to say, okay, we need to fire our statistics who are probably already like rigging the numbers like a million.
They're rigging the CPI, Tim. Who would do that? Who would actually rig the CPI numbers?
Maybe they read like my little ebook I made on inflation, unemployment, and how the book was called How It's Rigged, and basically it gives like a template for what they're already doing now through their own admissions. Like, it's not me like theorizing what they're doing; it's what they've already admitted to how they change the CPI. And so, I mean, these numbers are gamed, rigged. You guys already know this unless you're new. I believe if you text Liberty Advisor, one word, no spaces, to 71441, I did not have that pre-scripted or planned. Liberty Advisor, one word, no spaces, 71441, you will be sent that little ebook that I think it was like in 2016 when I wrote that, to dispel what was going on with Obama at the time. And then basically it could be used for Trump and now it could be used for Biden. And yeah, because everybody wants to gin things up, you know, keep printing money. Trump wanted to keep printing money, make things look good, and he gets to be the big savior and wants everyone to like him. And anyway, it's a whole nother topic. You know, I worked really hard to get him in there, and then immediately started talking crap as soon as he picked people like Jerome Powell at the head and then of the Fed, and then he started bombing Syria. Don't need to get into all that stuff again. Didn't even mean to get into this, but you know, it was too good that the Turkish president fires the government statistics chief as inflation skyrockets. I think that's a great place to end it. timandjonshow.com. Make sure to check us out. Make sure to check out John's recent interview with Ernie. Check out my interview with Ernie. You know, he's an OG of the Liberty Movement. He's actually going to be the MC of Anarchapulco. This year, he was the first one as well. So guys, check him out at freedomsphoenix.com. Check out his newspaper. Anyways, I'm Tim Picciott, Liberty Advisor, the libertyadvisor.com. John Snyson, the Economic Truth, economictruth.org. Check us out at timandjonshow.com. Thank you guys very much. Love you guys. Let us know other topics you want to talk about in the future. And we will eventually, I will get into the reasons why I think Hillary is my front runner right now, 2024. For those who don't know, I did predict Trump was going to win in 2016 on video, and they blame it on the Russians. And why they blame it on the Russians, and I predicted Trump would lose in 2020 because they would take a small amount of counties and rig these 6 states that were in a PowerPoint for a presentation. That's all on video. And I was talking about this probably hundreds of times throughout the past, you know, 3 years leading up to the election. So I don't know if I then nailed the Hillary one, which I hope I don't, then I mean, that's really me, not to sound like some egotistical jerk over here, but
Yeah.
I think there's so much flack for this over the years and getting called up by everybody when I really just wanted to like help people that you know.
Yeah, it really sucks, Tim. And you know, I thought Hillary would actually get in, and you know, Biden might have been dead or Kamala by now, and Hillary would have won. But I guess you might be right that you know, again, Tim is right again. Hopefully not, but yeah.
I mean, hopefully not. I mean, and I was working hard to make sure, you know, that basically, you know, Trump got in. Mainly, you know, it was before I got into like anarcho-capitalism. I was sort of like on the fringes of it, but then, you know, as you know, immediately, you know, it wasn't about Trump getting in. It was about stopping World War III with Russia with Hillary. But obviously, that doesn't mean that Trump is an angel. And there was enough good stuff he was putting out, and he was, you know, pretty anti-vaccine at the time, and he was talking about, you know, how like. The day of 9/11 was, you know, on the ground talking about how it had to be bombs and there's no way, you know, planes could take these buildings down. And he was, you know,
And then you had Biden and Kamala was anti-vax too. You got to remember.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like 2 years ago they were. And so, I mean, the whole thing, yeah, all politics is a joke. I mean, literally the first podcast I ever did says, doesn't matter if Jesus wins. I mean, what is going to happen is going to happen. And then there's no way to stop the inertia of where the system is going. And the real changes, such as, you know, basically getting rid of the Federal Reserve and retaining monetary independence, is just too hard of a band-aid to pull off. You know, he should have, and I'm not that money according back shit. I was talking about all this stuff the past 4 years and getting eviscerated and being called, you know, every liberal whatever by people, you know, for talking about this stuff, putting it out there for years. And it's just very, very frustrating because I wanted to help people. I wanted to wake up, you know, the Trump people, but then they just, you know, all got into one big circle jerk, and, you know, everybody listening to people who were just saying, oh, Trump red wave, and it's going to be, you know, the Trump family for the next, you know, 30 years. And, you know, new day for America, all had their eye off the ball. Nobody cared about, I mean, Trump should have never been giving interviews to mainstream media, should have been all doing all alternative media. Yeah, I'm sort of biased on that. Should have been getting on something like Gab, should have proactively gotten off Twitter right out of the gates, you know, could have used his position as a bully pulpit to really affect things. And yeah, he did do some good things, and he got some people, you know, pulled out of the Paris Climate Treaty, and yeah, is some good things he does, but it doesn't mean.
I sure woke up a lot of people, you know, from the.
Yeah, and then having this election,
news.
you know, how you know, what ended up happening with that, you know, certainly woken up some people, and don't want to get into those details, and I predicted it ahead of time. And, you know, I really recommend people go listen to an interview that Ernest Hancock did with Benny Smith and Bev Harris. Bev Harris is the one who is the producer behind Hacking Democracy, who is a liberal. And she got teamed up with Benny Smith, who is a Black Democrat, I believe out of Memphis or Knoxville. And he was, you know, on the board of elections there, and a computer programmer, whiz. guy, and he discovered the fraction magic in the voting machines. And again, the black Democrat, so obviously he's a white supremacist, Russian agent. And the only interview I've ever heard this guy give was on Ernest Hancock's show. And it's like amazing how he's like the one that discovers, he's the guy that like helps get Ron Paul to draft him to run in 2007 and creates the first Ron Paul meetup group. And he's the guy that creates the Ron Paul Revolution logo and the second radio show to start talking about Bitcoin, basically in the world behind Free Talk Live. And the first person to start interviewing Judy Mikovits like over like 100 times. Actually, the person that basically discovered me as well, the person that discovered like Tone Vays. Not that I got problems with Tone Vays, but I mean, not. I mean, I agree with a lot of stuff he says, but there's some other stuff I don't agree with. I guess like anybody.
Roger Ver, not to mention Roger Ver. He got Roger Ver.
He had like Vitalik Buterin on the show, and no one knew who Vitalik Buterin even was, but no one knew who Dr. Judy Mikovits was, but no one knew who a lot of these people were. Like he somehow, like he just interviewed like Michael Heiss.
He creates the trends. He's the trend man.
I mean, he'll people like Gerald Celente on, but people do know who he is. But anyways, not to give like a huge, glowing endorsement. But yeah, I do mean to give a huge glowing endorsement of Ernie. So anyways, a lot of what we have to say does come from, the understanding and the years of experience that he has, sort of bestowed upon us. But obviously we come more from the financial angle. But it's not like I agree with everything he says, but I mean, I can't really, there's not like too much I probably don't agree with. But anyways, thank you guys so much. I know that was like the longest outro ever, probably even longer than the intro. That was very long, but we love you guys. I guess rambling on and not ending things is something we're good at. But I'm the Iron Man, so obviously I can go a long time. But anyways, thank you guys so much. We'll be back again. We're trying to do these. Basically, we're recording this every other Wednesday. And trying to keep that consistent. Now this will be, I think, like the second or third one in a row that we've kept consistent. And so anyways, love you guys. Thank you guys so much. Please, like, share, subscribe in the comments, do all that stuff. Talk to you guys later, and
Arrivederci.
stay free. Take care, guys.